In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. I learned that line a few summers ago from a dear friend and colleague, the Reverend Leon Dunkley. It was actually, I was part of something called the Beloved Community Project out at Star Island a couple of years ago, and I learned it there. The spirit of it and the harmony break open on the words, "It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love." What a time to be alive. Like many of you, I follow current events closely. I care about the world. I care about my neighbors. And I have watched as pandemic has exploded in our midst, as long-standing racial injustice has burst into public consciousness, as our nation's economy teeters precariously with the most devastating impacts being visited on those who are already struggling. There have been such stories on the radio and television for years now, 3, 4 years, trauma after trauma, children separated from parents at our border, regular attacks on our democratic institutions, incidents after incidents of racially motivated violence, and fantastical political arguments from the mouths of public officials to justify all manner of corruption and malfeasance. I don't know about you, but sometimes I have felt like I am living in the novel 1984 by George Orwell, where up is down and down is up and lies are true. What a time to be alive. In such a time, what does it mean to lead in love? Our daughter Aaliyah offered me some wise instruction on this subject not long ago when she was just 3 years old. Aaliyah is a sunny, loving person, and she has a singular way of speaking. She latches onto certain words and infuses them with her own shades of meaning. At the time, she was particularly fond of the word choice. If, for example, my husband suggested that they go out for hot cocoa, Aaliyah was likely to nod approvingly and say, "That would be a good choice." And if I informed her that it was time for a nap, she was apt to bellow, "No, that would be a bad choice." One of the beautiful things about living with a toddler is that you always know where you stand. Aaliyah has also always bestowed nicknames liberally, and they've often been relational. When she was 2 or 3, I would be Mama Peanut and she would be Girl Peanut, or I'd be Mama Worm and she would be Girl Worm. And there was a time when we were reading a lot of Mo Willems books and about an elephant named Gerald and his best friend Piggy. And she declared at some point that I would be henceforth known as Gerald Princess, and she would like to be known as Piggy Chickworm. So bear with me. This is all important backstory if you were to understand a conversation that took place between us one morning as we sat down to breakfast. Aaliyah was at the dining room table and she turned to me and she said, "I love you, Gerald Princess, and I love our whole family too." I was singularly stressed that morning, but I looked back at her and I just melted. "I love you too, Piggy Chickworm," I said, "and I love our whole family too." "That would be a good choice," said Aaliyah. And then she paused and she pointed to a blank piece of paper on the table with her fingertips and she said, "Let's put our love choices right there." And then she did, tapping the paper with her fingertips and saying, "Put, put, 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 put." Dutifully, I placed my fingers on the table alongside hers. Put, 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 put. She said, "Let's put our love choices right there." And then she did. My daughter's words were a clear teaching for me about leadership and love. Sometimes it's so much simpler than we make it. Faithful leadership requires that we choose a path with love, a path with heart. Effective leadership demands that we manifest that love in concrete and thoughtful ways, that we choose to give our love where it's needed. This is an election year, In less than 3 months, it's hard to believe we're there already. We go to the polls for the most important election of my lifetime. Our democratic institutions shelter the well-being and opportunity of millions of Americans and impact the lives of people all over the world. Our democratic institutions produce policy that can protect or destroy the natural world. Let's put our love choices where it matters, right there. Leadership and love are first and foremost a choice, a decision to accept the circumstances we have been handed, the day we have been given, a decision to respond to those circumstances with vision and purpose and care. A couple of years ago, my husband Chris and I went to see the Broadway show Hamilton in New York, thanks to the generosity of my brother and my sister-in-law. It was the best Christmas present ever. And there's a line in that show that becomes a motif. Angelica Schuyler sings it first. She's the daughter of a wealthy, influential man in colonial America, and she's captivated by the revolution. She and her sisters, Eliza and Peggy, enter the stage. Eliza and Peggy sing about the danger in the city, the chaos associated with civil unrest and impending war. But Angelica sings, look around, look around, look around at how lucky we are to be alive right now. History is happening in Manhattan. It takes a special kind of spirit to look around in a time of danger and uncertainty and see opportunity. We too are at a watershed moment in US and global history. We're at a crossroads, an inflection point. Our choices will determine our future. Not so much our choices about how to think, but our choices about how to act, how to show up. The choices we make about how to show up with and for others. The choice to listen deeply and share honestly. The choice to restore relationships and reconstitute communities, reconstitute our democracy. This moment demands that we move fully into the prophetic role of the church, that we accept the gifts of this day, even the painful gifts, and choose to lead in love. We can begin by getting clear about what we value most and what is most at risk, and daring to apply our loving leadership right there. I value strong communities, resilient communities, capable of facing challenges with resourcefulness, fidelity, collaboration, creativity, and joy. I value the power of strong communities to hold and heal people and call us forward towards service and connection. Anne mentioned to me that this congregation is engaged in elections work and a number of other issues, engaged in work around affordable housing and homelessness and immigration, which is fantastic. She mentioned to me that you have been writing postcards to inspire folks to turn out for this election, and that you did the same at the midterms. I can tell you from experience how much this way of showing up matters. My family lived in New Hampshire, as I mentioned before we began, for 8 years. And as you probably know, New Hampshire is the first in the nation primary, which means that we got a ton of attention. I can't tell you how many presidential candidates have been in the sanctuary of the church I served. It is a lot of them. We would go to coffee. There would be Andrew Yang, where we were trying to buy our coffee, or Marco Rubio, or all of the presidential candidates moved through our churches and our coffee houses and our community centers. They were all over New Hampshire, and we were flooded with mail, most of which went straight into the recycling bin. But not the handwritten postcard I received from a woman in Montana, an older woman with slanted handwriting, whose card I stuck to our refrigerator. It moved me that someone cared enough about our democracy to do something personal, and that her note was written for me. So thank you for your ministry. Thank you for the ways you choose to lead in love. Your generosity of spirit has impact far beyond your walls. It matters. We at the UUA are in your corner. We're here to partner with you and amplify the gifts of your ministry. And so I have to say this because people ask me all the time what the UUA actually is and what it does. Our association, the UUA, is the embodiment of a covenant that Unitarian Universalist congregations make with one another. Congregations come together to do things that no congregation can do alone. Our association has 3 mission areas: equipping congregations for vital ministry, training and supporting leaders, both lay and professional, and advancing UU values in the world. We do this holding in our hearts the vision of a multicultural, multiracial, anti-oppressive association in which people of all identities thrive. This year, we have chosen to advance UU values by investing in elections engagement. Our ability to make progress on the issues we care about most deeply: climate justice, human rights for immigrants, LGBTQ rights, they all hinge significantly on the outcomes of the 2020 elections, all over the ballots in our various states and local communities and at the national level. We've launched a year-long organizing campaign called UU the Vote. It's a national effort to get out the vote, educate ourselves and our communities about the issues, and combat voter suppression. It's a moral issue. As UUA President Susan Frederick Gray says, this work is faithful moral action because we hold democracy as a core principle of our faith. It's about the worth and dignity of all people. It's about care for the planet. It's about our commitment to justice and equity. I'm thrilled that you're part of this movement, which has so much momentum right now. It's kind of on fire, which is exciting. Nationally, we have established partnerships with Fair Fight 2020, whose goal is to secure free, fair, and secure elections. We're partnered with organizations like Reclaim Our Vote, which are working to ensure access to communities that are targeted for voter suppression. We're partnered locally on that issue in a number of places. We have a dedicated organizer in Wisconsin and a growing network in Georgia. At General Assembly this year, we set a goal of 100,000 volunteer calls to Texas voters in advance of their primary to encourage them to engage, utilizing call technology funded by UU the Vote and in partnership with Reclaim Our Vote. By the end of the week, we had surpassed that goal by 114,000 outreaches to local folks specifically who had been targeted for voter suppression. The UUA is a valued partner in elections work. We have earned a reputation because we bring both technology and volunteers to the table. We have about $400,000 to raise to fully fund this campaign, which includes funding increased capacity for calling technology. Our goal is 3 million calls before election day, and I believe we can do it. Your ministry, partnered with the ministry of your sibling congregations, can move mountains, or at the very least, it can move a nation. And your support matters too. I hope that your congregation will consider devoting a special collection to advance this effort in August or September. And if you have a personal interest in supporting this work, that is my role with the association. Please do contact me and I'll be sure to share information about how you can support this important work. What a day we have been given. What a time to be alive. Let's put our love choices right there. Not long ago, I shared a children's book called The Journey with the kids in my congregation. A lot of my history in ministry has been with children and youth. I have a special fondness for ministry to children, youth, and families. And I was down with the kids during a service, and we shared a children's book called The Journey with the kids in the congregation. It's the story of a refugee family fleeing violence and searching for a new home. The plot of the story is simple and familiar. A mother takes her children and flees from a war zone. They travel in secret, crossing borders, leaving pets and belongings behind, interacting with smugglers and border guards. It's a treacherous journey with many twists and turns. At the end of the last boat ride, the mother spots land. And as the story ends, One of the children looks up and sees a flock of migrating birds. She says, I hope one day, like those birds, we will find a new home, a home where we can be safe and begin our story again. I closed the book, and one of the kids in the class hollered out, "It's a cliffhanger!" I said, exactly. And what is a cliffhanger? It's a story where you get to make the end yourself, another child chimed in, which was amazing. True, I replied. And that is a lot like life. And that is one of the reasons that congregations like ours exist. There are stories going on all around us, stories about the earth and her people. The endings have not yet been determined. The endings have not yet been determined. So we come together to learn to be the people we need to be, to help these stories end with love and equity. We come together to learn how to be braver and kinder and wiser. We come here when hard things in the world break our hearts and we need to feel encouraged again, or even just help. We give of ourselves to make our faith strong and alive and relevant and vibrant. Thank you for all the ways that you strengthen this congregation. Thank you for all the ways this congregation strengthens Unitarian Universalism and our shared ministry in the world. What a day we have been given. Look around. History is happening. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. Let's put our love choices out there. Let's put our love choices right here. It's time to thrive. Today and always, may it be so. Amen.